The aroma of freshly baked tiramisu filled the small kitchen as I carefully arranged the final touches on the dining table. Candles, the soft golden kind she loved, flickered gently, casting warm shadows against the wall. A delicate bouquet of lilies, the same flowers I gave her on our first date, rested in the center, their fragrance mingling with the sweet scent of dessert. Tonight was going to be perfect. Emma deserved this. She deserved everything. It was her birthday, and for weeks, I had been planning this surprise. Renting this quaint little restaurant after hours, convincing the chef to let me take over his kitchen for the night, it wasn't easy, but nothing was too much for her. She'd been talking about feeling overwhelmed with work lately, so I thought, what better way to show her she was cherished than with an intimate evening designed just for the two of us? I glanced at my watch. 30 minutes until she arrived. I reached for my phone to double-check her gift, a necklace with a tiny sapphire pendant. Sapphire, her birthstone. It was waiting in its velvet box, tucked safely in my coat pocket. I couldn't wait to see her face when she opened it. As I reached for my jacket to pull out the receipt for the necklace, just to make sure everything was perfect, a crumpled piece of paper fell to the floor. It wasn't mine. Emma must have left it in the pocket when she borrowed the coat last week. I smoothed the paper out, my curiosity mild, expecting to find a grocery list or an old note. Instead, it was a receipt from a hotel downtown. Last Saturday, a king suite for two. My breath hitched. I stared at the receipt, the elegant logo of the Golden Horizon Hotel mocking me in bold letters. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, each one more painful than the last. Maybe it wasn't hers. Maybe it was misplaced. Maybe. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my messages with Emma, looking for something, anything, that would explain this. She had said she was at a friend's baby shower that day. She even sent me pictures, her smiling with a group of women, holding pastel balloons. So, why did the date on the receipt match? I felt the first cold tendrils of doubt snake their way through me. It couldn't be true. It couldn't be. A knock on the door startled me, jolting me out of my spiraling thoughts. It was the chef, returning with the wine I had requested. I forced a smile, thanked him, and closed the door. My hands were trembling as I poured myself a glass, draining it in one go. I needed to focus. This was Emma's birthday. Whatever this receipt meant, I would deal with it later. Tonight had to be about her. About us. But no matter how much I tried to shake the thought, the image of that receipt burned in my mind. The question loomed over me like a dark shadow: who had she been with? The drive to pick Emma up was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual, my knuckles whitening with every mile. The receipt was folded in my pocket, its edges sharp against my thigh like a knife pressing closer to my skin. The evening air felt thick, heavy. As I pulled up to her apartment, I caught sight of her through the window. She was standing in front of a mirror, adjusting a delicate silver bracelet I had given her last Christmas. Her reflection smiled back at her, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "Happy birthday, beautiful," I said, stepping out to greet her. She turned, her face lighting up with that radiant smile that used to make my world stop. Tonight, though, it felt hollow, like a photograph faded with time. She leaned in for a kiss, and I caught a hint of her perfume, warm and familiar, yet somehow distant. "You're spoiling me already, aren't you?" she teased, her laugh a melody I'd once cherished. "Maybe a little," I replied, forcing a grin that didn't reach my eyes. The ride to the restaurant was filled with her chatter about the day, work surprises, texts from old friends, and plans for a weekend getaway she wanted us to take. I nodded in all the right places, letting her words wash over me without truly hearing them. My mind was elsewhere, replaying the timeline of last Saturday over and over like a broken record. When we arrived, Emma gasped. "Michael, this is, wow," she said, taking in the dimly lit space, the flowers, the candles. Her eyes sparkled with delight, and for a fleeting moment, I almost believed everything was fine. We sat at the table, the chef discreetly serving course after course of her favorite dishes. She laughed, sipped wine, and told stories, her voice animated as she recounted a memory of us from years ago. But I wasn't truly there. At one point, while she was distracted by a delicate dessert topped with gold leaf, I reached for her phone, which she had casually left beside her plate. My heart pounded as I hesitated, my fingers brushing against the smooth glass. "Something wrong?" she asked, tilting her head. I jerked back my hand like I'd been burned. "No, nothing. Just thought I saw a message pop up." She glanced at her phone, shrugged, and returned her attention to the dessert. The opportunity was gone, but my resolve deepened. I needed answers. After dessert, I suggested we take a walk by the waterfront. The air was crisp, and the lights of the city reflected on the gentle waves. Emma linked her arm through mine, her warmth pressing against me. It felt like the old days, like nothing had changed, but the weight in my chest reminded me it wasn't true. As we walked, I tested the waters. "Hey, Em, what did you end up doing last Saturday? You were at the baby shower, right?" Her step faltered for the briefest second, a hitch so small most people wouldn't notice. "Yeah, of course," she said, her voice steady but her hand tightening slightly on my arm. "Why do you ask?" I shrugged, keeping my tone light. "Just curious. You mentioned something about it being at a hotel, didn't you?" She laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh, no, it was at Sarah's place." "Why would you think that?" I stopped walking, turning to face her. "Because I found this." I pulled the crumpled receipt from my pocket and held it up. The soft glow of the streetlights caught the bold hotel logo, the date unmistakable. Her face drained of color. "Michael, it's not what you think," she stammered, taking a step back. "Then tell me what it is," I said, my voice low, barely masking the anger simmering beneath. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, as if searching for the right words. Her hesitation was louder than any confession she could have made. "It was just," she looked away, her voice breaking. "It was nothing, Michael. I swear." "Nothing?" I repeated, the word cutting through the air like ice. "Nothing requires a king suite for two at the Golden Horizon Hotel?" Her silence was deafening. The world around us seemed to freeze. The hum of distant traffic, the laughter of passers-by, all of it faded into nothing. It was just me, her, and the truth she wasn't ready to admit. And for the first time since I met Emma, I didn't know if I could trust the woman standing in front of me. Emma stood there, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if shielding her body from the accusations spilling from my voice. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. That silence, the kind that drags you under like quicksand, told me everything. "I'm waiting, Emma," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I didn't want to tell you because it wasn't important," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "Not important?" My laugh was bitter. "You lied to me about where you were, and now you're calling it not important? Who are you with?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the ground, the streetlights casting sharp shadows across her face. "It wasn't like that, Michael. I was helping a friend. He needed me." "He?" The single word felt like a thunderclap, echoing in the narrow street. Her head snapped up, panic flaring in her eyes. "No, it's not what you think. He's an old friend. Just a friend. Do friends book hotel suites together?" My tone was ice, and I felt my patience thinning by the second. Her mouth opened, and she stammered, "It wasn't like that. He was going through something, he didn't have anywhere else to go. I stayed to comfort him." The explanations poured out of her in a torrent, each word weaker than the last. I watched her face, the way her eyes refused to meet mine for longer than a moment. "How long?" I asked, cutting through her rambling. She froze. "What? How long has this been going on, Emma?" "It hasn't." "Michael, you have to believe me," she pleaded, stepping closer. Her hands reached for mine, but I pulled away. The warmth that used to comfort me now felt like a betrayal. "You lied to me." You lied about where you were, and now you're lying about who he is. What else have you been lying about? Tears welled in her eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I hated myself for pushing her this far. But the thought of her in that hotel, with someone else, crushed any sympathy I had left. Please, Michael, she whispered, her voice cracking. I love you. I didn't want to hurt you. That's why I didn't tell you. That's not love, Emma. That's cowardice, I shot back. She flinched as if I'd struck her, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out, fight back, defend herself. Instead, she just stood there, tears streaming silently down her face. Who is he? I demanded, the words raw and jagged in my throat. She hesitated again, and I could see the war raging inside her, whether to protect her secrets or come clean. Finally, she spoke. His name is Liam. He's an old coworker. He's been having a rough time since his divorce, and I wanted to help him. Help him? I repeated, the bile rising in my throat. That's the best you've got? You thought the only way to help him was to lie to me and spend the night with him in a hotel? Her face crumpled, and she started to sob. I made a mistake, Michael. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't want to lose you. Please, you have to believe me. The anger that had fueled me all evening burned low, replaced by something colder, something emptier. I felt like I was staring at a stranger, a woman with Emma's face but none of the trust, none of the love I thought I knew. I thought you were the one person I could always trust, I said, my voice hollow. But now I don't even know who you are. Michael, don't say that. I'll do anything to fix this. Just tell me what to do, she pleaded, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. I shook my head, taking a step back. The space between us felt like an ocean. You can't fix this, Emma. Not tonight. Her sobs grew louder, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. My chest felt like it was caving in, but I knew I had to leave before I said something I couldn't take back. I need time, I said, turning away. Michael, wait, she called after me, but I didn't stop. The sound of her voice faded as I walked into the night, each step heavier than the last. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't be near her. Not now. The city lights blurred around me, but all I could see was the image of that hotel receipt, the bold letters etched into my mind like a scar. I had loved her. I had trusted her. And now? Now, I didn't know if I would ever be able to look at her the same way again. The days following that night passed in a haze, each one blending into the next. I barely slept, the weight of Emma's betrayal pressing down on me like a lead blanket. My apartment, once filled with her laughter, now felt suffocatingly quiet. Her messages came frequently, long, apologetic texts, begging me to meet her, to let her explain one more time. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat alone in the silence, replaying her words over and over. It wasn't what you think. But what else could it be? The image of the receipt haunted me, the date glaring like a beacon of everything I hadn't seen. By the third day, I caved. I needed answers, closure, something to make sense of the chaos in my mind. I sent her a message, we need to talk. Come over tonight. Her response was instant, thank you, Michael. I'll be there at 7. That evening, I sat waiting on the couch, the necklace I'd bought for her birthday still in its box on the coffee table. It felt like a cruel reminder of the life I thought we were building together, a life that now seemed like a lie. At 7 sharp, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Emma standing there, her eyes red and swollen, clutching her purse like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Hi, she said softly. I stepped aside, letting her in without a word. She lingered near the door, her hands twisting nervously. Michael, Don't, I interrupted, raising a hand. Just tell me the truth. All of it. She swallowed hard, her gaze dropping to the floor. I already told you. It was a mistake. I didn't plan for it to happen, I swear. Liam, he's going through so much, and I just wanted to be there for him. By lying to me? I shot back, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Her head snapped up, her face crumpling. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want you to think. To think what? That you were cheating on me? The words tasted bitter as they left my mouth. Her silence was deafening. Did you sleep with him? I demanded, the question tearing out of me like a wound reopening. Her lip quivered, and she looked away. No. I didn't. I promise, Michael, I didn't. We talked, and I stayed because he was a mess. He begged me not to leave. Begged you? I laughed bitterly. So, what, you just couldn't say no? Or were you enjoying the attention? That's not fair, she snapped, her voice breaking. I was trying to help someone, and it got out of hand. I made a mistake, but it wasn't what you think. You keep saying that, I said, my tone icy. But you haven't given me one reason to believe you. Her shoulders sagged, and tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you, Michael. I made a mistake, but it's you I want to be with. Please don't let this ruin us. Ruin us? I repeated, the anger bubbling over. You already did that when you decided I wasn't worth the truth. Do you have any idea what it feels like to love someone, to trust them completely, only to find out they've been hiding things from you? Her sobs grew louder, but I couldn't stop. The floodgates had opened, and every ounce of hurt, anger, and betrayal poured out. I gave you everything, Emma, I continued, my voice shaking. I believed in us. And now I don't even know who you are. Michael, she whispered, stepping closer, I'm still me. I still love you. We can fix this, I know we can. I took a step back, shaking my head. I don't think I can. Not after this. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost reached out to her. But the wound was too fresh, too raw. This isn't something you fix, I said quietly, my voice hollow. This is something that breaks you. Her sobs filled the room as she sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. I stood frozen, the weight of her pain and my own suffocating me. For a long moment, we stayed like that, her crying, me staring at the remnants of what we'd once been. Finally, she looked up, her face streaked with tears. What now? She asked, her voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. Instead, I turned away, my eyes falling on the unopened box on the coffee table. I picked it up, hesitating for only a moment before placing it in her hands. Happy birthday, I said softly. She stared at it, her expression a mixture of heartbreak and confusion. Michael, please. Goodbye, Emma. I walked to the door and opened it, the finality of the gesture hitting me like a punch to the gut. She stood, clutching the box, and slowly walked out, her sobs echoing down the hallway. When the door closed behind her, I leaned against it, my legs threatening to give way. I had loved her. I had believed in her. And now I was alone. The quiet after Emma left was deafening. Her scent still lingered in the room, a mix of her favorite perfume and the faint sweetness of lilies from the dinner I had planned. The unopened wine bottle on the table mocked me, a reminder of the celebration that had turned into a wake for our relationship. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the couch, staring at the spot where she had crumbled in tears, her apologies spilling out like broken promises. Every word she'd said replayed in my mind, battling against the harsh truths I couldn't unsee. Morning came, gray and uninviting, but I couldn't sit there any longer. I grabbed my jacket and walked out into the brisk air, letting the cold bite at my skin. The city was waking up, cars honking, people rushing to work, but I felt detached from it all, like I was moving through a fog. I found myself at the waterfront, the same place we had walked the night I confronted her. The waves lapped gently against the shore, their rhythm soothing but unrelenting, like time itself. I stood there for what felt like hours, watching the water, trying to make sense of the chaos in my heart. I thought about Emma's face as she walked out of my apartment, the way her voice cracked when she begged me not to give up on us. Part of me wanted to believe her, to take her back and pretend none of this had ever happened. But the damage was done, and trust wasn't something that could be patched up with tears and apologies. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the dozens of messages she had sent since that night. Each one was a desperate plea. I love you. Please, let's talk. I'll do anything. I typed a response, my fingers trembling as I wrote, I'm sorry, Emma. I need to let this go. I need to let you go. I hit send and immediately felt a crushing weight lift from my chest, only to be replaced by an emptiness I wasn't sure would ever go away. The following weeks were a blur of routine, work, errands, anything to keep my mind busy. My friends noticed the change in me, but I brushed off their concerns with practiced ease. I didn't want to talk about it. Talking made it real, and I wasn't ready to face the full weight of what I'd lost. One night, while sorting through a drawer, I came across the necklace I had bought for her birthday. I had forgotten to take it out of her hands when she left, and now it sat there, its delicate sapphire catching the light like a cruel joke. I held it for a long time, running my thumb over the smooth surface of the stone. It was beautiful, just like she was, but it didn't belong to me anymore. The next day, I walked into a small jewelry shop downtown. The owner, a kind-faced man with glasses, looked up as I approached. Looking to sell, he asked, nodding toward the necklace in my hand. I hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yeah. It's time. He examined it carefully, then handed me a fair sum of cash. As I walked out of the shop, I felt a strange sense of finality, like a chapter of my life had been closed for good. Months passed. The pain dulled with time, but it never fully disappeared. I avoided the places we used to go together, the songs we used to listen to, the little things that reminded me of her. But every now and then, I would catch myself thinking about her, wondering if she was okay, if she had found someone else, if she had finally learned to be honest with herself. One evening, as I walked home from work, I passed a small cafe with warm, golden lights spilling out onto the street. Inside, a couple sat by the window, their heads close together, laughing over something unseen. I paused, the ache in my chest returning, but it was different now, softer, quieter. I turned and kept walking, the cool night air filling my lungs. Emma had been a part of my life, a piece of my heart, and for a time, my world. But now she was a memory, a lesson learned the hard way. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. Sometimes, letting go isn't the end. Sometimes, it's the beginning. Subscribe to never miss a new story and discover even more captivating tales.